While the never-ending gang wars was a hot-button issue in Camden for decades, many outside of the borough had been oblivious to the deadly conflict that had been going on minutes away from one of London's most famous tourist hotspots. After all, by 2019, gang violence all over London had spiralled out of control. The Guardian reported a 10-year high on violent crime in London, with a spike in knife and gang killings. In just 4 years, the homicide rate had increased by 50%. The research group Action on Armed Violence further reported that stabbings accounted for almost 2/3 of all murders in London for 2019, and much of the gruesome activity was taking place in Camden, which kicked off its year with nearly 600 violent crimes reported in January alone. Gang activity shouldered much of the blame between county lines drug dealing and the warring factions. Traces of violence continued to crop up across the borough, including a 25-inch blade that was found ditched next to a playground in Queen's Crescent. Stats from the Met Police would reveal Camden to be the second most dangerous borough in London, behind only Westminster. And the negativity surrounding Camden would lead mainstream outlets to brand the area as a flashpoint for violence. In essence, one of London's most desirable locations had become a battleground, with the bitter war between the numerous estates that made up the 51st and 71st postcode alliances showing no sign of ending, even with prominent members on the run or in jail. As 2019 came to a close, Suspect and S-Wavy remained hiding out in Kenya as the Met Police's manhunt continued. And at this point, something interesting happened. The rising crime rates in London coincided with the rising popularity of UK drill music that gave ordinary people a window into what was really happening in London's most dangerous estates. And despite having released just one song with little success, Money and Violence, even before fleeing to Kenya, Suspect had been recording music and plotting out a career as a rapper. And he seemingly wasn't going to let being on the run from murder charges stop his plans. In fact, Suspect had stockpiled plenty of material for his music, and the fallout from Culprit's murder only seemed to kickstart his career. Around the end of 2019, Suspect would be seen on social media freestyling with active gang members, visibly armed with machetes. Now, it's unclear whether or not this was recorded before or after the murder of Culprit, but the ultra-violent lyrics all about violence and stabbings would be a taste of what was to come from Suspect when he began taking music more seriously.
Tomorrow morning. Yo, I do it like this. Ching that neck, swing my shank and I take off heads. My man got from head to toe, where you got more than a belly and chest. Another attempt, run out of breath, you run out of luck, run out of life, need to re up. All my friends, they need to free up. When they see us, need to dash, they don't think twice. Try get cheeky, back in knife, bro just revved and made them fly. Get back up, I don't know how, but I catch up and get man down. Try get charged and shout. But a shout just turned to a scream, when you all gave more than free. Hold your head and stop that lead. Hold your neck cause it's hard to breathe. Take my chest and tear his belly, but it must be hard to eat.
Around a month after that freestyle clip had been circulating, on December the 16th, 2019, Suspect released his first official solo track, Way Too Charged, which he already had teased earlier that year while still being in the UK.
My blade and set this pep. 150 peps, that's 1,000 back in breads. Zombies call for free or free. And don't look like Walking Dead. Pop them doors, they move so quick. I see man running trick. F put him in the bonnet, and the others has got to chop it.
It dropped on the popular grime and drill YouTube channel Mixtape Madness, and came with a music video filmed in person before Suspect had gone on the run for the murder of Culprit. Way Too Charged and Money and Violence were among the very few examples of Suspect himself actually appearing in one of his drill music videos in person. However, Way Too Charged represented a big leap forward in terms of Suspect's ability and confidence as a rapper. But what really stood out was the track's brutal lyrics, where Suspect bragged openly about the crimes that he and his active gang comrades had committed, casually rapping about jumping in stolen cars, looking for ops, and trying to stop their hearts, while accompanied by SY and AR. Lyrics eerily similar to the events that played out the night Culprit lost his life. And it wasn't just the violent lyrics that stuck out, but the nonchalance or even enthusiasm that Suspect seemed to display when talking about violence. Like the opening bar where he says, "Bro put 5 stab wounds in someone's back," and he gave him high five like, "Yes, my ack." He would boast about ramming specific ops with cars and saying it must have stung like nettles. And even in one disturbing lyric, he mentions greeting his ops' mothers in the streets, saying, "She don't know I'ma kill her son." He would also rap that he gets high off of both all the adrenaline that he gets from killing, and going on to say he's smoking C-Miz. Way Too Charged was a raw introduction to Suspect as both a rapper and a gangster. And while the majority of drill music fans listening were not yet aware of just how much truth there were behind these gruesome lyrics, this was only the beginning. and he would continue his momentum, appearing on songs and perpetuating the crimes that he had committed in the streets, something that he would continue to build on throughout his time on the run. Soon after Way 2 Charge dropped, Suspect would feature on a song alongside UK drill veterans Blanco and Biss from legendary South London crew the Harlem Spartans. That was a song titled Hood Up, and saw Suspect creatively describing the murders that he had been involved in, rapping that he minus one of his ops from 51st, and now he calls them 4, promising to stab anyone from the NW5 postcode, as well as dissing the Peckwater and Queen's Crescent estates, promising to kill his ops from these areas. Slowly, Suspect was getting more confident on the mic and comfortable releasing music with outright confessions of his crimes. And despite literally still being on the run for murder charges, he was surprisingly active on social media. In early 2020, he was still active on Twitter, retweeting quotes from his favourite US rappers like Lil Durk and Quando Rondo, and then on March the 4th, 2020, he would release his next solo track, Purge Style, with a menacing concept that bordered on horrorcore, this time likening his activities in the streets to the movie The Purge, where people are granted a night to satisfy their murderous instincts without legal consequences. Once again on the song, Suspect gleefully describes the horrendous acts he committed during his time as a gang member in Camden, including disrespectful lines referencing G-Squeeze's injuries after he was rammed and stabbed, and claiming that no one has retaliated since they killed C-Miz, even claiming openly to have stabbed over 10 of his ops, including C-Miz, and describing the incident in vivid detail, comparing himself to a barber, saying his blade cut through his dreadlocks. At this point, Suspect had been evading police for around half a year, and it would seem that despite the arrests of some of those involved, the police were no closer to catching Suspect himself. At some point, he must have found himself feeling a rush from evading the police. Suspect would tweet soon, after Purge Style dropped, that it's ironic that cops suspect him of murder, given that his name is Suspect. He was seemingly suffering no consequences for either the crimes he committed or the music he released speaking on them. So he continued making demonic drill raps and building his profile in the drill scene. On March the 15th, 2020, active gang members dropped the posse cut No Hook, featuring Blitz, SY, Striker, and Suspect, with Suspect himself rapping concerning bars where he raps that stabbing ops is what he does for pleasure and that he's Olympic level when it comes to stabbing. He also drops juvenile bars comparing hunting ops to the schoolyard game Duck Duck Goose, suggesting the ones who get caught end up on stretchers. Even going on to drop a slick double entendre saying that he camps for ops and leaves them dead inside forensic tents. An all too familiar sight in the aftermath of the many deadly attacks that have played out in Camden so far. He would also reference the murder of 51st member Dotty, who was killed by Tottenham gang members from OFB from the Broadwater Farm Estate, saying that since Dotty died, they've never retaliated or been to the Broadwater Farm Estate. The disses were extremely specific and personal, and this would continue in every song he released. At the beginning of April 2020, Suspect would drop the song Zero Life, a collaboration with fellow accomplice of the culprit murder SY, who himself had fled to Somalia. The track came with lyrics where he claimed that he was smoking C-Miz and that it tastes so sweet, while the likes of Suspect and SY were continuing to disrespect their Camden rivals. Thousands of miles away in Africa, back in Camden, street activity would continue. On the 27th of April 2020, there was a shooting in Queen's Crescent, right outside the community centre, close to where C-Miz had been killed, an attack which left a man hospitalised. Interestingly, a month before this, Camden MP Keir Starmer had actually been elected as the leader of the Labour Party, Britain's top opposition party, putting him in the running to become Britain's next Prime Minister.
The next Prime Minister of this country, Keir Starmer.
That's the hope, now the hard yards. Labour's leader today embracing the task ahead and looking like he means business.
These elections really matter, and we've got to go out and we've got to win them.
So while the war in the streets raged on, the politicians would be looking for their photo opportunities. And a week after that shooting at the community centre where Keir Starmer had promised again and again to put an end to the violence, he would appear once again, smiling and handing out food. And while the war in Camden raged on, one of its main instigators, Suspect, was happily hiding out in Kenya, building his notoriety through his music career and getting more and more brazen. At the end of April, Suspect would retweet Lil Durk's post about being talked about but never touched. Clearly having evaded the police for 8 months at this point after the murder of culprit, Suspect must have felt untouchable too. He was living life like a real-life character from Grand Theft Auto, and with that in mind, perhaps unsurprisingly, he would take inspiration from violent video games when it came to promoting his music. On May the 24th, 2020, Suspect released the track Franklin, Trevor and Michael, likening himself, SY and S-Wavy to the murderous main protagonists from the 5th game in the infamous series of gangster video games Grand Theft Auto. On the song, Suspect begins by recognizing how small back and forths between gangs can quickly escalate before again talking about the violent game that his life has become. Perhaps comparing it to a video game is one of the only ways that Suspect could cope with the grim details of his life as a gangster. But for now, he would thankfully be unable to commit any more murders, being restrained to simply rapping about crime. But even from Kenya, he would be eager to go back and forth with his ops, who continued to send verbal shots from Camden. On June 7th, 2020, Action from Peckwater drops a freestyle dissing Gxng and their dead members. He starts off by name-dropping Sadiq, aka S45, who was killed in the night of violence after Dotty's vigil, as well as disrespecting Nuts, who was killed soon after Culprit in what some believe is a retaliation attack, as well as Mitch, the OG to many AG members who was murdered back in 2017. This was a pointed response aimed at Gxng members who were now rappers, an effort to use the mic to tell the world that numerous people from the 71st areas had been killed too. This would result in a musical back and forth. Within a few days later, on June 12th, 2020, Suspect uploads a freestyle with a mask on in a kitchen, directly responding to Action from Peckwater.
Aye. About Suspect speed up, where was we can squeeze up, hit my step and beat up. Whack from throwing Pisa, Miss got packed from throwing Pfizer, Coke got packed from throwing Caesar. What a mess, call a cleaner, AG step roll up block creeper. What a mess, what a mess. Got away with chings on, don't do legs. Ask me knee how he changed his neck. He went harmless gang, Victor's magazine dumping chef. Step through combo, then go quest. There's no point of going to peck. When Broski got that 40, peddling the path that shot too naughty. Ay, so many ups on boom, you bear death threats, I swear they bores me. If we get hands on, I guarantee they're gonna dig this grave. I wish they saw how Miz got caved and trust me, he would've acted that brave. He put his foot on the gas, he nearly got window shaved. One more thing would have got his face, would have been the end of the modelling days. Can't wait till I get that back. They see if that Neat can run. What these have in common, they've all been done. And what the have in common, they ain't done nothing. Aye, just known for cutting. Get around there, and I do it with no discussion. Aye, if I get a fish from the waters, no, I'm a gutting. Aye, get man.
Interestingly, Suspect had seemingly gotten more comfortable showing more of himself online, posting another picture in the same kitchen, holding up 2 fingers, signalling how many people he'd killed, and once again likening his life to a video game with a caption reading, "One more killing and it's a UAV," a reference to popular first-person shooter Call of Duty that awards players a UAV or unmanned aerial vehicle when they achieve a streak of 3 kills without dying themselves. Perhaps to some, it was a funny joke, but it really shows that to Suspect, the murderous life he'd lived as a gangster was just like a video game. And at this point, he was still yet to face any consequences for these 2 murders he'd allegedly committed. And as the year went on, he would continue to lean into his new identity as a buzzing drill rapper. His next release was the track Test My Temper on June 22nd, 2020. Suspect would also claim to be the reason that his ops are hiding and that even their mothers are frightened, and ending the track saying that they've got plenty of their ops and have the police stressed because they can't find evidence on them. This was a bold statement, essentially taunting the cops who had yet to locate Suspect at this point. Test My Temper was also one of the rare occasions where the song came with a music video. However, because Suspect had fled the UK at this point, he would now have to rely on body doubles to play him in those videos. The video itself was unusual in some ways. It portrayed Gxng as a sophisticated criminal organisation running out of their headquarters in Agar Grove, and depicted members gathered at a meeting watching a presentation of the ops on their hit list and debating how threatening each one might be, with one scene even mocking Peckwater member C2 for working as a model, something that's hardly a diss when you consider C2 seemingly had a lot of success in modelling and even once got a shout out from Kanye West on Twitter. But anyway, the music video depicted Gxng as a well-organised and large gang with a lot of members moving militant, and Suspect was by no means the only one trying to get his music career off the ground. The following month, on July 2020, Gxng members released the song Straight Facts, which featured Broad Day, Too Smoky, Yevs, and ML. In the second and third verse, Yevs and Too Smoky appear to refer to C-Miz by his nickname, C-Murder, saying that they put red rum in a box, i.e. they killed him, and rapping that now he's dead, they're smoking murder and putting him in the air. Despite the ruthless lyrics, it was clear Gxng members, beyond Suspect, were beginning to develop as rappers and make a name for themselves in drill music. However, as is often the case, unfortunately a lot of these guys are so deep in the streets, even when it becomes clear that they have a talent for music, it can be hard to leave dangerous habits in the past. And once it was a full year on from the murder of Culprit, the streets of Camden would become extremely deadly, and drill music would provide the soundtrack for yet another violent summer. By the summer of 2020, the many gang conflicts that had plagued the streets of Camden and beyond were as heated as ever, and over time, new alliances were being forged in the streets and in music. This would soon see the violence broadening beyond Camden's borders, with new gangs and sets being brought into the conflict. 2 warring gangs that had a historical hatred for each other are SSK, based in the South Kilburn estate in Brent, northwest London, a borough bordering Camden, and HRB, or the Harrow Road Boys, named after Harrow Road, a long stretch of road based in the historic city of Westminster that borders both Camden and Brent. But the gang itself is primarily based around the Mozart estate, which sits in the W9 postcode. This is the estate famously repped by one of the biggest rappers coming out of West London, Fredo. HRB and SSK have historically maintained beef with each other over the span of 3 decades. There's enough history between these two crews to make an entire video, and maybe one day I will. But for now, all you need to know is that these are yet 2 more London neighbourhoods in a perpetual war. And in the summer of 2020, that war would be driven into overdrive when a HRB affiliate by the name of Billy the Kid was shot in the back twice on July the 16th, 2020, losing his life allegedly as a result of a shootout initiated by his own side. And in a heartbreaking turn of events, his own friends would end up being found culpable for his death due to the police presenting evidence that they were the ones who started shooting. This is a sad situation, and yet another example of the many tragic and unintended consequences that can result from living the gang lifestyle. Following this incident, the tension between these two warring gangs went to another level, and behind the scenes, it was rumoured that members of HRB had become friendly with members of Active Gang, with it being suggested that Active Gang may have even had close friendships with Billy, the HRB member who lost his life in that shootout. With that in mind, on the 1-year anniversary of the murder of Culprit, yet another brutal slaying would occur on the streets of London, this time concerning an affiliate of South Kilburn. According to reports, on August the 12th at 12:20 AM, a silver Jaguar XF estate circled the block at Hansel Road, eventually spotting SSK affiliate Gucci, real name Jeffrey Wegby, outside of his house. 2 gunmen jumped out of the vehicle and fired 10 shots. He managed to make it inside, but he'd been shot 4 times in the chest with 2 different guns. Eyewitnesses that were at the scene reported that the shooters didn't seem in a hurry as they leisurely re-entered the Jaguar and left the scene in what seemed like a professional hit job. After this went down, police responded to reports of a shooting at Hansel Road, and when they arrived, they found Gucci in his home with gunshot wounds to the chest, and he was pronounced dead at the scene. Following the discovery of the body, a forensic team was seen collecting evidence throughout the day, and initially there were no leads, and later the police would appeal for more information on the murder, ultimately releasing CCTV footage of the Jaguar and even offering a £20,000 reward for information. Once news broke of this early morning assassination, the papers would then begin reporting on the backstory of the man who lost his life. Gucci had apparently picked up that name due to it being his favourite brand of clothing. He was apparently a churchgoer, with his family being religious and his brother being a schoolteacher. Gucci was apparently a respected member of his community, and his slaying had surprised many of those who were unaware of his apparent ties to the streets in South Kilburn. However, when he was young, he had reportedly sold his passport for extra cash, and according to the news, his family knew that he was into some dodgy stuff, but never pressed him on it. Alleged affiliates of the South Kilburn street gang will be seen posting next to his grave after the funeral. Gucci was mourned by his community and friends who posted it to social media following the shooting. There also appeared to be a connection between Gucci and another famous drill rapper, Digger D, who also has a bitter grudge against Fredo from HRB, with Digger posting Gucci rapping up on his Snap story and later even shouting him out in the ruthless HRB diss track Blue Woo 2, which also included numerous lines going at Active Gang and Broad Day Assassin specifically. A prominent member of HRB by the name of Lil Dots would release a collaboration track with Broad Day from Active Gang just a month after the murder, a disrespectful diss song called Roll Up. Roll Up had a bold chorus where Dots rapped that they put people on the news, rapping that Harrow Road and Active Gang kill and stab their ops together, and that they ride with 2 guns, shoot, and drive back to the Mozart estate to smoke Gooch, with the line about rolling with 2 guns being particularly brazen considering the fact that the forensics in the Gucci murder proved that 2 different guns were used to kill him. The following month, on November the 1st, 2020, he drops the song No Hook, not to be confused with the Active Gang track No Hook from March 2020. This new song was a collaboration between Broad Day and Suspect, along with Absav, Workrate, and 60, members from another collective known as 156. Later in the song, Suspect would grab the mic and rap a disturbing verse, saying that he can't ask Culprit how the chest shot that he gave him feels, and reminiscing on the murder he committed, rapping that he remembers that day and it gives him chills and makes him laugh when he smokes and thinks about it. Even going on to say that he would do it all again because he loves that feeling. Talking about the dirt you did to your ops is one thing, but the way that Suspect elaborates on the pleasure that murder gives him is truly twisted. And Suspect would also reference his Islamic faith in the verse, rapping that fellow AG member SY is a savage, and despite not being a member of the Islamic militant organization Al-Shabaab, he's still trying to kill kuffars or non-believers, and saying that he hasn't been doing his 5 daily prayers of Salah because he's been in a car with a gun on his lap. Suspect goes on to drop a highly incriminating lyric, rapping that it was at night when Culprit got killed and that the cops still want the suspect for that, essentially taunting the Camden police, who at this point, over a year after the murder, had still been unable to capture him. Suspect goes on to reference the other murder he claims responsibility for, insulting his ops and saying that they can't get C Miz or C Murder back and that he's smoking on him. And Suspect would even end his verse referencing the most recent murder of Gucci, rapping that Gucci's gang only know how to show off, but since he got killed, they haven't retaliated, and questioning if they have firearms or are willing to use them. Altogether, this song was yet another shocking dig at their rivals, both in Camden and in South Kilburn, who had buried Gxng less than 2 months before this song came out. Broadday's first upload of No Hook would clock in 100,000 views in a day, but the original upload would eventually be taken down by the police. Perhaps unsurprisingly, just days after No Hook released, rumours would circulate suggesting that Broadday had been arrested in connection to the case. However, there was never any public confirmation that an arrest had been made in connection with the murder of Gxng, and during this time, images would circulate seemingly showing Lil Dots and Broadday Assassin in jail together. But it's unclear when these pictures were taken, or exactly what charges they were facing at this time. But while Broadday was behind bars, even from Kenya, Suspect would begin to reference the murder of Gxng mockingly in his songs, like his appearance on the track Still Active with CB, where Suspect raps that he's smoking on Gxng, an insult that he would repeat again on the 2022 track A-Style. And Suspect wasn't the only one, as S-Wavy also name-dropped Gxng later that year on a leaked track called Savages. However, despite the public disrespect and seemingly open discussion of Gxng's murder on songs, it would seem ultimately that there was no evidence connecting Broadday to the murder of Gxng, and he could very well be completely innocent and just inferring a connection to the crime to further his rap career. And the following year, in August 2021, Broadday would seemingly be fresh out of jail, beating whatever charges he was facing, and appearing in a celebratory social media post on Suspect's Snapchat story, where Suspect told Broadday Assassin to do up his laces, as well as appearing on an Instagram live with fellow Active Gang members T-Scam and Suspect celebrating his release. This live would be yet another brazen display, which started with Broadday rapping along to Pooh Shiesty's revenge anthem Back in Blood and changing the lyrics to shout out Lil Dot's Hood Mozart.
One of myself for Mozart.
Eventually, we would see Broadday, T-Scam, and Suspect all attempting to join together on a three-way Instagram live, with Suspect's internet struggling, prompting comments saying he's got that Kenyan connection. Once Suspect's connection was working, he would congratulate Broadday on beating his case, as well as bigging him up for getting people.
Nah,
Broadday Assassin, you know. Fresh song, fam.
Gang, gang,
It's the
gang,
gang, man, dog.
This would be followed by Broadday rapping lyrics where he says that their gang is infamous for guns and knives and saying they roll with blickies.
Hey, Sus.
What's happening, lads?
Infamous for guns and necks.
Hey, so infamous for guns and necks. I tried you keep telling me rap. Hey, them
How do you keep telling me rap? Infamous for guns and necks.
How do you keep telling me rap? Because I ain't done a drill with Hatred Santa rapper.
80 clicky.
80 clicky. Roll my blicky.
T-Scam would say that the people have been waiting to hear from Broadday, but he doesn't freestyle before ending that live because his mask is too hot.
Hey, BA, they want to hear you though, man. I know that's what everyone's here for. But they don't do freestyle, man. Wow. They only got straight exclusives. Oh, man. How can I be like him?
Hey, that's a luck of thing. I can't even breathe behind this mask, bro. I feel like I'm dying, bro.
This would be followed by social media footage appearing to show Broadday in the Jewelers treating himself to a welcome home gift, an iced out AP watch. And Broadday would go on to release numerous songs. But despite him being free, the following month, London police would announce 2 unnamed people had been arrested in connection to the murder. But these charges would seemingly fail to stick too, and by February 2022, the BBC News reported that despite the offer of £20,000 for any information on the case, Gxng's murder remained unsolved and the killers were still on the streets. Perhaps we'll never know who was truly responsible for this brazen assassination, but what is clear is that Active Gang and its members were eager to use their music to paint a picture of themselves as being responsible for all the deadly acts going on around them. And unfortunately, after a violent summer in 2020, with the police once again stumped and unable to stop the street revenge from playing out, soon Active Gang's rival would make a move in an effort to avenge the loss of culprit the year before.